Hello, Minister Howard E. Barrett Jr. here again. If you viewed my companion video, Cunnilingus, Minister Howard E. Barrett Jr.'s technique, you probably have a few questions. Questions like, why offer a sex technique with clear market value to the world for free? Do you really have a viable plan to eradicate poverty? Or if I donate to your nonprofit, how will the money be used? All your answers can be found here. Now, understanding the market value of an ecstatic sex life, monetizing it does seem like a good idea if one can handle the negative blowback. I never thought that I could. For 30 years, I was a practicing Christian and never would have been able to reconcile my faith with the encouragement of illicit pleasure outside of marriage. But as my continued enlightenment traversed from Christianity to atheism to humanism, my understanding of the propriety of sexual pleasure outside of marriage evolved as well. Though we humanists understand the preferability of either sexual fidelity or honesty in its absence, we make no pronouncements on how consenting adults should traverse their very personal and individual sex lives. But first, let me take you back a few years. As the vast majority of us probably already know, the only way to solve income inequality within any economic system is by redistributing income. Most politicians stop there and go no further. They erroneously espouse the notion that redistribution of income is un American, so they don't even consider what should be the next question. What is the fairest way to redistribute income? I say that the fairest way to redistribute income within our capitalist system and without fundamentally changing it is to remove the ability for one person to make money from the efforts of others, to remove that from capitalism. I call this the pimping element in capitalism. In other words, the fairest way is to transform virtually all businesses to employee owned businesses where each employee owns one share of common stock, has an equal voice in the running of the business, and no preferred stock is offered. So almost 4 years ago, on May the 3rd, 2019, I attempted to institute my plan to eradicate poverty, which I call my Fire Your Pimp initiative. I uploaded a very lengthy 1.5 hour video on my personal YouTube channel, Serving to All, entitled NBA Players Help Stop the Pimping of the People. It was intended to be a marketing tool to help NBA players start a league solely owned by the players, who in turn would assist me with seed money to build businesses that are completely employee owned. That went nowhere. A few months later, amid the 2020 Democratic primary season, but still in 2019, I sent information to the campaign and senatorial offices of 5 Democratic candidates about my plan with links to the video. At first, I was only going to contact the 3 presidential candidates who openly campaigned on the issue of income inequality: Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and former Representative Beto O'Rourke. But as a black man, I couldn't reconcile sharing this plan only with white candidates, knowing it could catapult any one of them who took it seriously to the White House. So I included 2 black candidates that I felt could be convinced to take up the cause: Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. None of the 5 responded. But here's the kicker: what they didn't seem to realize is that this is the only program that I can recall actually ever that is guaranteed to appeal to both the far left and the far right of the political spectrum. On the far left, it appeases their interest in caring for the poor. On the far right, it appeases their anti collectivity stance, epitomized by the motto of protagonist John Galt in Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. To wit, I swear by my life and my love of it, that I will never work for the sake of another man, nor ask him to work for mine. Both sides intrinsically know that firing the pimps is for the greater good of our capitalist economy, and it's a much easier economy to convince the world to emulate. Better for America, better for the world. But I got no takers. So here I am sharing my knowledge of sexual pleasure with the world. The thought process is this: I help the world's adults attain greater sexual pleasure and ask that they, in turn, help me to help the world to attain greater economic viability. Understand that I would not be exposing sexual gems for the sake of personal financial gain, nor to receive the adulation of women. And though my teenage years were a bit unsteady when it comes to the ladies, I've never had a problem gaining and keeping a woman's attention in my adult life. Besides, I'm smart enough to know that although free sexual instruction will endear me to the masses, there's undoubtedly a vocal minority that will be harshly critical. But I knew that I had a viable plan to eradicate poverty, so I was and am willing to endure whatever criticisms ensue for the sake of this cause. Now I know that what I'm doing goes against the codes of both the streets and capitalism as presently constructed. In both cases, the code is that the game is to be sold, not told. Thus, you are never to give away info that has monetary value. I'm taking the opposite approach, that the game is to be told, not sold. I just figured that giving away info was the best way to finance my poverty eradication program. By giving the information away, grateful recipients are inspired to donate. And yes, I knew that many people worldwide would be so grateful that they would want to show their appreciation monetarily. I knew that I could direct them to my personal PayPal account to collect these gifts. I could then donate about 90% of the funds to my tax exempt religious nonprofit and get a hefty tax refund for my donation. But I also knew that allowing others to make tax exempt donations instead of giving me money would likely increase the volume and size of the donations, enabling me to assist even more people to fire their pimps and control their own economic destinies. This is what walking in my purpose, which includes advocating for we-ism over me-ism, looks like. My main goal in life has always been to make the world a better place. Now, that didn't seem like such a far-fetched goal when I was a believer, meaning when I believed in a creator God. And no one else would have thought it far-fetched either, because those that believe in a creator God believe that everything is possible through him. Of course, when I became an atheist, then humanist, things did change. At that point, my lofty goal appeared to be quite out of reach, but I persevered anyway. And now I'm going to start small and then go big, instituting my plan to fund employee-owned businesses through nonprofit funding. Imagine how America would have looked when COVID hit if we already had 10 years running where over 90% of our businesses were solely owned by the employees that work at those businesses. Imagine all these businesses opting for a $15 minimum wage and all employees sharing the dividend income equally. Imagine in America where wages or salaries coupled together with dividend income boost the real income of its citizens so much that in real income, 90% of us are earning the equivalent of at least $30 to $35 an hour. And depending on the industry, imagine many Americans making a great deal more. If this was our reality, when the COVID pandemic spread across the nation, shutting down the economy would have set back no American financially and no bailouts would have been needed. hospitals, gas stations, and food providers and distributors would have been the only entities needed to be open, and the rest of us could have been comfortably at home with our kids, awaiting a healthy return to work. But it doesn't stop there. Not only would all Americans be more financially stable, their workplace environments would also be much safer. Over the years, we've seen too many corporations compromise worker safety in favor of corporate profits for their shareholders. This will never happen when the workers are the sole shareholders. They'll never gain a consensus of workers slash owners to compromise their own safety in favor of profits. For now, all funds donated will go to my religious nonprofit, the Ethical Humanist Community of Love, Incorporated, and transferred to its soon-to-be integrated auxiliary, Our Common Welfare Incorporated, both registered in Georgia. This works the same way as the Catholic Church's integrated auxiliaries like hospitals and schools. As integrated auxiliaries of a religious organization, donations to these hospitals and schools are tax exempt, just like the donations to the Catholic Church itself. But Our Common Welfare was registered 4 years ago as a 501c4 organization and not a tax exempt 501c3. Therefore, any donations to it aren't currently tax exempt until I file amendments to change it to an integrated auxiliary of the Ethical Humanist Community of Love in the coming weeks. So I apologize to those who prefer not to donate to religious organizations outside of their own faith and would be more comfortable donating to the community service-oriented Our Common Welfare. But once I've effected the change so that donations to both organizations will be tax exempt, I'll include links to both organizations. Now, for the record, I have no intention of accepting a salary for my work with either organization. I've always had issues with the fact that most nonprofit organizations and charities are top-heavy with administrative costs, primarily because of the huge salaries of the people running them. Then they ask others to volunteer. So since I believe in leading by example, I believe I'll be on much firmer ground asking others to volunteer if I am essentially a volunteer myself. I will only have my nonprofits pay for reasonable expenses, though as the primary spokesperson, I'm certain that the board will be more than willing to pay to get my teeth fixed with some of the funds raised. But never forget that if monetary gain was my objective, I'd have all who are grateful for my information to give directly to me via my own long-held personal PayPal account. My goal is more altruistic, the eradication of poverty. If I start the process, eventually the public will expect government to follow suit. They just might insist that the Small Business Association only provide loans to companies that follow my employee-owned model. But if it is to be, it's up to we. If we get the ball rolling, our success will force government to consider doing the same. In the meantime, I hope that my information provides you with a more fulfilling sex life and that you give in accordance with your enthusiasm and ability so that I might enhance lives economically as well. The donation link is below. Well, that's it. I hope that everyone enjoyed and learned something from Women's History Month and that we all learn to love and appreciate the women in our lives more abundantly. They are the portals through which life enters into the world. They should be exalted for this and never be forced to be such a portal against their own volition. And I would even be so bold as to say this. If there actually exists a creator God, and if he actually favors one gender over the other, it would be the gender through which life is nurtured for 9 months or so and that possesses the portals through which all life emerges. Now that we've learned how to please the women in our lives more efficiently, let's help their families to live life more abundantly. The time for dreaming the American dream has come and gone decades ago. It's long past time for the dream to become reality, but if it is to be, it's up to we. We must do it because our politicians won't. It's time that we led them instead of allowing them to lead us. Peace and love.